What is going on, you guys? It's your boy Avery here, and welcome to a special episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Depth. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the who, what, when, why, where, and how of Mulcharrmys. When to use them, how to use them, should you use them, should you even play them, and should you spend the $1,200 plus on Fiendsmith Rizal with 6 Mulcharrmys like your boy did. So be sure, before all that, destroy the ever-living boo-boo stain off that like and subscribe button so that I can claw myself back into the YouTube algorithm after being sick for almost a week now. And I really appreciate all the love and support in my community posts here on the channel. I've just been sick as a dog. Finally got over a fever that lasted for about a day and a half. Anyway, we're back and better than ever. I'm really sorry about the lack of uploads. My health has really just been all over the place. That's what happens when you are a cancer patient diagnosed with a rare type of cancer in von Hippel-Lindau disease, which you can read about all that and more down in the description below, where I have a link to my book. It's $9.99. Half of all profits go towards the VHL Alliance to help raise awareness about this rare cancer disease. But hope you're all having a fantastic day. We're living our best life each and every day. So let's go ahead and dive on into this. I've been doing a lot of playtesting with Fiendsmith Rizal, as I just talked about, spending a bunch of money. And I feel that even though a lot of people are getting upset about the fact that we have so many Max Cs running around in the format, and soon to be a 7th Mulcharrmy in the form of Mulcharrmy Nihilus, or Nihilus, whatever, aka Mulcharrmy Meowsle, as it's going to be called here in the TCG. And with the release of this Mulcharrmy, I wanted to talk about the most effective ways to get value out of your Mulcharrmys. And of course, as soon as I start recording, everyone starts blowing up my phone. But the main thing that I see people complaining about, other than the price, is that these things are Max Cs. Yes, they are, but you also want to know when it is the best moment to use these cards. You know, if you have double Fualos in hand, are you just going to shotgun both of the Fualoses immediately in the draw phase so that you're not susceptible to talents, or are you holding them? A really funny example of this is that I was watching a duel from one of my locals here, actually. Shout out to the YUGIOH process, my buddy Tino, where it was Fiendsmith Rizal versus Memento. And the Memento player normal summoned the Memento that lets you summon one from the deck. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments. And he attempted to activate the effect to summon one from deck. The Fiendsmith Rizal player activated a Fualos in response. He asked for a response. The Memento player had none, and he chained a second Fualos. That Memento player went on to lose that duel because he got hand trapped 4 times. Double Fualos, a Veiler, and then when he attempted to try and fuse, he activated his 4th hand trap, being Nibiru. So he was able to get a draw 2 off of that Fualos because he waited for his opponent to do something that would trigger the Fualos, as allowing him to draw. Now, a lot of this does come down to how your opening hand is. You know, if you're playing Fiendsmith Rizal and your opening hand going second is, say, like double Fualos, double Imperman, like an Ice Rizal, then you may want to hold on to your Fualoses until you know that you're going to get a draw, because if you shotgun them both at the start of the turn, and let's say that the opponent's also sitting on double Fualos, and they just end their turn, when you draw for turn, if you don't hit another starter card and all you have is Ice, the opponent may try to Fualos you, or you summon the Ice, they hit you with an Imperm, and then you're just passing turn because you don't have any other engine, right? So yes, there are semantics that you can play in that regard, because like if you have another hand trap, you can normal summon it and then ditch a card to special summon the Ice and then do like Fiendsmith combos, but that's really semantics at that point, you know what I mean? And even then, you're triggering your opponent's own Fualos. And what's interesting too is that I feel like that this sort of reminds me of the old school days of Gorz the Emissary of Darkness, where I had plenty of times, my opponents had plenty of times back in the day, where they would go first, maybe not open up the best hand, or maybe just want to play conservative. And even though they went first, which back in the day, you started off with 6 cards going first instead of 5, they would pass turn on an open board. And it was at that point that you were kind of playing mind games, because it's like, well, crap. Do I want to run the risk of summoning a monster and attacking directly, and then my opponent has Gorz, and then I'm going to be crapping all over the venue floor? Or do I want to play passively and just assume that my opponent has Gorz when maybe they actually don't? So it's kind of a mind game thing, and there would be times where my young self would just brick because my deck building was garbage, I'm sure, back in the day as compared to now, and I would just pass turn with a Gorz in hand, and my opponent would either need to play something to out the Gorz, or they would just need to take the risk and attack direct, and I drop out a Gorz with a token, and now all of a sudden I'm back in the game. So when it comes to stuff like that with the Mulcharrmys, if the opponent passes on an open board, sure, they may have bricked, but they could also be sitting on Mulcharrmys, because remember, these can only be used when you have no cards on your field. I feel that it comes down as well to the combinations, right? You open up a 5-card hand. Let's say that you're going second, and in this 5-card hand, you only have Purulia. What is the best way to use these Mulcharrmys? That's the next point I want to get into in this little sort of mini episode of the Yu-Gi-Oh! In-depth series, because this isn't going to be like a 45-minute long video. At least I hope not, right? And when it comes down to something like Purulia, when it can only draw you a card whenever the opponent normally special summons from the hand, I feel like if you only see Purulia in your opening hand going second, this is something I feel that it's worth shotgunning in the draw phase, because especially if you're outside of game 1, you're in game 2 or game 3, the opponent may have side decked in thrusts and or talents. So regardless if you're activating this in the draw phase or at a later time, you're going to turn on that thrust. The opponent may have side decked in thrusts with D-barriers if you're on Rizal or whatever the case may be, and that's just Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Like if they have it, they have it. So if I'm only seeing Purulia in my opening hand and I'm going second, because normally you're going to have Purulia side decked, or if you're main decking it and you just lose the die roll, then sure, I guess. But draw phase, I would say 99% of the time, I'm activating Purulia, because there's not really ever a time with a meta deck. I mean, obviously, you've got the rogue / table 500 shit like Flunderies. Sorry, Flunder players, but the deck is pretty much table 500 at this point, where you don't see in advance that they're going to, like, normal summon unless, like, that they're going to, like, search something off Robina like an Eaglin and then summon and then do whatever. But I feel that this is something you get away with shotgunning in the draw phase, because just doing a normal summon isn't going to really proc any sort of chain link that you can chain the Purulia to just to get value. So it's more of a Mulcharrmy that you play that you can use in the draw phase and that you can get a guaranteed draw. Same way, like if you open up, say, a Purulia and a Fualos, I'm still just shotgunning the Purulia in the draw phase, because, even Malice, they normal summon from the hand. Well, that's the only place you can normal summon from, but you get my point. They normal summon, you're going to get a draw, and then once you see, like, they activate Dormouse and banish a Malice, you could chain the Fualos at that point, because then at that point they're going to have a second body, and then they have to commit to some kind of board, because why would they just end on 2 bodies? Same thing with Meowsle, especially for Malice, and actually even Gladiator Beasts, interestingly enough. I've played against a couple of Gladiator Beast decks here on EDO Pro, and I actually botched a match just yesterday because I was still feeling sick and I just wasn't able to think straight. My brain was all over the place. I was making misplays. But they actually summon from the graveyard a lot because they like to loop things like Gladiator Beast Comeback and use that over and over again. So having Meowsle to draw you a bunch of cards was actually really clutch in that matchup. So this is definitely a card that is good going into more roguish matchups. And then, of course, it's really great going into Malice because you're going to know from a mile away that they're going to summon from the graveyard or banish because it's going to start a chain. Whether it's, Cheshire Cat or something is banished and then you chain the Meowsle and then you're guaranteed a draw. And that's really where these come in handy the most, is when there is some sort of chain link involved or some sort of game state involved where you know that they're about to do some kind of extraordinary summon, for lack of a better term. Like again with Malice starting a chain link to summon from the banish zone, you can just chain the Meowsle from there. Or like the Memento example I gave, where the opponent decided to hold on to both his Fualoses so that he could, draw 2 cards off of that. And when we're talking about like these combinations, Purulia always being played in the draw phase is fine. I don't feel like, the more that I've messed around with Fualos and Meowsle, I don't feel like Fualos and Meowsle are ever something that you're going to shotgun in the draw phase outside of a situation where you only see, like, say, 1 Fualos, right? If you only see 1 Fualos in your opening hand going second, I feel like at that point it is fine to shotgun in the draw phase, because at that point you only have 1. If the opponent doesn't have an Ash or something to negate it, now they're dealing with the fact that, okay, I can still build a board. My opponent's only drawing 1 card, but they're still drawing 1 card. Now, I'm sure some people are going to say, well, Avery, it's always better to shotgun the Fualos, especially in the draw phase, because you don't want the opponent to talents you. Fair enough. However, if you are worried about talents, especially if you've got double Fualos in your hand, you really don't care about talents, because you're going to be drawing so many cards that the talents pretty much becomes a moot point. And the opponent may know that and think, okay, well, like let's say you chain double Fualos to like a special summon from the deck or something. So they summon out the monster from deck, you draw 2. Let's say that the opponent's sitting on talents. They can play the talents and rip a card out of your hand, but then you're just going to draw for turn and then you break even anyway. And if the opponent decides to go Talents Draw 2, maybe you drew an Ash Blossom off that Flawless. So now you're eliminating another resource that the opponent has access to in their hand, especially in a powerful card in the form of Talents that I'm seeing a lot more decks play 3 copies of because so many decks are playing 15 plus hand traps, which is a very good meta call, right? It's even good going second into Rizal. Like, hell, I had a player use Talents on me, and my established board was Wave High King and a Detonator. And I was pretty much forced to go Detonator, detach the last material, and pop the Wave High King because I didn't want my opponent to, either summon another body and then link off into Fiendsmith lines. And then I also want to have access to my Lacrima. I didn't want them negating my special summons with Wave High King. So I was really in a difficult position in that regard, even though I went first and set up a board because my opponent had the talents and I just couldn't deal with that, right? So I'm sure that hindsight being 2020, there's another way I could have played around it, but in the heat of the moment, that's what I went with. So I really feel that the most amount of value you can get when it comes to playing, say, like if you open with double Flawless, I feel like you really hold on to these until you know you're going to get that value. Like if the opponent normal summons Ice Rizal and you go, they activate effect and you go chain Flawless and they go, Ash. Well, then that's fine. You're just going to chain the other Flawless and you're still getting that value. And again, it does come down to what you open. If you open up, 3 cards in your hand that's all gas and you're sitting on double Flawless, there's the argument to be made. You just shotgun double Flawless and the opponent may just pass turn and then you draw for turn into another engine card. Again, if the opponent passes on an open board, then that gives them the opportunity to play their Flawless and then they're kind of trying to skip your turn. There is the argument to be made for that. But if you want to get that guaranteed value, you just keep both of these in your hand and you chain them back to back. That's really not bad. And I would argue outside of Purulia, I feel like that's what you're going to be doing most of the time when it comes to these Mulcharrmys. These two specifically in Flawless and Meowsle, and not so much Purulia unless you open up 2 Purulia. I feel like, though, even if you open double Purulia, I feel like you still shotgun both in the draw phase. Because then, if the opponent just normal summons, then you're drawing a card. Now, what would you do in a situation, let's say you see 3 Mulcharrmy, God forbid. You see, say, double Purulia and Flawless. You can only activate up to 2 Mulcharrmys a turn, because they say you can only activate one other. I would say you go draw phase, Purulia, especially if you know what the opponent's playing outside of, things outside of the game itself, it's game 1 and both players know what they're playing. Then you can kind of play differently, but I don't feel like that's ever really going to come up. Just strictly game 1, you don't know what either player is playing, and then game 2 and 3, obviously you have a better idea of how you want to play your Mulcharrmys and things like that. And it can come down to that, right? With side decking and things. But just on a foundational point, how you would use these 99.99% of the time. And God forbid if you see 3 Mulcharrmys, then you definitely go with the 2 best ones. In this case, it's going to usually be Purulia and Flawless, unless it's Malice, then you're going to go with, I would say Flawless and Meowsle, because at the end of the day, you're going to draw more cards off of a Meowsle and Flawless than a Purulia and a Flawless. And if the opponent talents is you and they see that you've got Purulia and they want to hit that, sure, who cares? If you're on Rizal, you're going to normal summon the Purulia, summon out another level 4, and then you're still going to make an Excitonite or a Duo Drive anyway. It really doesn't matter. So if you open 3 Mulcharrmy, it's really not the end of the world. You just use the 2 best ones in that particular matchup. And I think at that point, you're going to be drawing plenty of cards. I think you're going to be just fine. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about with this is that should you ever be worried about the +6 shuffle cards from your hand into the deck issue? I have yet to have this come up, and I've played 100+ games with Mulcharrmys. This really seems to be something more because they're quick effects when you have no cards on the field. This really seems to be something more of when you go second and you top deck a Mulcharrmy, which with Meowsle into Malice, this can actually happen. If you top deck Meowsle, you activate the effect in your draw phase, for example, or in your main phase if you're playing talents, so you can hope that the opponent negates it, and then you can use your own talents. You go Meowsle, now the Malice player is kind of crapping their pants a little bit, because now if they want to play on your turn, which don't quote me on the stupid fucking Malice trap names, but there's the Malice trap where they can summon, I think, from grave or banishment, so they can summon out the White Binder and then use the White Binder to banish 3 Malice monsters from their grave and then summon out all 3. Well, if they set up their board to do that combo on your turn, now they're kind of hurting because they have to either do it in response to the Meowsle and kind of just shotgun it, or they have to just deny themselves that play or allow you to draw a bunch of cards. Because if you do the Meowsle and the opponent still goes through with that play, you're drawing 4 cards because they're going to summon back the White Binder and then they're going to summon back 3 of their Malice monsters and just try and play on your turn. So if you break that board and you draw a bunch of cards, then yeah, that +6 is going to come up and you're going to lose cards out of your hand, which of course can be mitigated if you get your whole hand into the grave or you set them on the field, whatever the case may be. But at the end of the day, that +6 is really not going to come up much, but that is a niche situation how it could come up. And something that you should keep in mind if you decide to shotgun one, if you top deck it, draw for turn, you draw into it, like, I don't know, you played an Upstart Goblin, you don't have any cards on the field, and you draw into a Mulcharrmy, like, it's kind of whatever, right? But these things also double up as level 4 materials for Rizal plays. If you're playing Rizal, these things don't inherently lock you into anything, so you could just normal summon, say, a Perulia, and then special summon some other level 4 Rizal, make like an Exciton or a Baguska or whatever. Like, that's something I don't see a lot of people talking about, is like, these things are level 4. So, like, if you top deck one and you don't feel like playing it, you could just normal summon it as a level 4. And then, I don't know, like, special summon X Rizal and move on with your day. Like, that is actually pretty good. So, guys, this is what I'm thinking right now for how I'm going to be playing Mulcharrmys, especially moving into YCS Orlando. Let me know if there's something I missed. Again, I'm still kind of getting over this cold a little bit, so my brain's kind of all over the place. But leave comments down below if you have any questions. I'll be happy to answer them unless someone gets to it before I do. But I'll be making sure to keep track of those comments if any of y'all have any questions, comments, or concerns. What do I think overall about the Mulcharrmys? If you can afford them, you should definitely be playing 3 Fualos in any deck you play. You should definitely be side decking Perulias to some degree in any number that of a deck that you're playing. And then Meowsle, I would say 1 to 2 of. The OCG, what they've been doing right now is maximum 3 Fualos, 3 Perulia, 1 Meowsle. 7 seems to be the right number. Granted, they have Max C, but I think if you were to play 9 Mulcharrmys, I think that's just way too much, especially because Meowsle is not the best. It's only really good against Malice and I guess zombies for the 2 people that are playing zombies in the room. So, guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.